Safety messages. Why do we need them? And what are their purpose in the jobs that we do? Well, we're in safety sensitive positions, and safety messages are vital to our job performance. I'm happy to say that on the fixed route side and on the paratransit side, we have two drivers on each side who are employees of the month. And they are because when you look at their records, both from the customer service as well as supervisors' acknowledgement, as well as their driving record, these drivers stand out. And it's just want to acknowledge them. It's not to say that we don't have fantastic drivers in general, we do, but these drivers have been acknowledged across the board as being exemplary. So thank you very much. To be more specific, they provide us with best practices and information that helps us to reinforce what we learned from when we started out driving. And we might feel as though, we've been doing this for a while, so we got that. But the truth is that without continuous reminders and continuous, like, revisiting, what it is that we're doing, we will drop the ball occasionally. And maybe we'll drop the ball when we least expect it and cause some great damage uh, to individuals and property and ourselves. So the idea is to have a daily goal of zero accidents and zero injuries. And if we start out with this goal, not at the back of your mind, but in the forefront of your mind, accidents will cease to happen. We do have accidents here. And so to imagine that it will never be you is a fantasy. I'm sure that nobody starts out their day thinking that they're going to have an accident today. So it just happens. It could happen when you least expect it. So let's expect and project, a goal, a daily goal of zero accidents and zero injuries uh, every day. On average, in 2012, which is an indicator year, 92 people were killed on the roadways in the United States each day. There were 30,800 fatal crashes during that year, and that was not a pivotal year. This chart is a chart of the average annual fatalities in the United States from 2000 to 2009. It's an indicator year, which means that, or years, which means that we're looking at the average throughout the years. Question is whether these are going down. We're now in the year 2021, right? Significantly uh, different than it was back in 2009. The fact is that accidents have increased over the amount on this chart, mainly because of the use of cell phones. But we're going to look at this chart, which is basically a 9-year chart of just really the level of accidents, uh, private and commercial. And as you can see, over on the private transportation, there's 36,849 crashes involving um, cars, trucks, pedestrians, bicycles, motorcycles, trucks, buses. Um, and you can see buses were not available because there were few of those during that period. Um, but as you go down, the large majority of the accidents were up in the top part of that category. Now, when you go to commercial vehicles, let's go down to the totals. 36,849 for cars. Look over at where it says um, commercial transportation vehicles. Basically, uh, the totals were uh, 4,000 for crashes on highways, and then 800 crashes with commercial non-highway vehicles, right? Uh, Commercial transportation that had passengers, 182. That involves us, all right? So you can see that there's a significant difference between uh, cars uh, and buses and commercial transportation. So here's a grand pivotal idea. If we're sharing the road for passenger cars that have thousands and thousands of fatalities each year, compared to the very few, couple hundred fatalities that are caused by buses and commercial vehicles, and even fewer those that carry passengers, if there's that great a difference, it only leads me, and it should lead you, to assume that we must always be vigilant because the cars around us are more dangerous to us than we are to them. Don't drive distracted ever, because it's those that are around you that you have to pay attention to always. Always. Safety thoughts. Question is, why are drivers who are involved in near misses or even collisions, whether preventable or non-preventable, that happens on day one, and then 2, 3 days later, a week later, after really reviewing what the situation is, uh, they're still doing the same thing, repeating the same behaviors. Why is that? This month, September 2021, we've had 2 non-preventable accidents and 2 preventable accidents. Now that includes both paratransit and fixed route, but it shows you that we are not without fault. We do have accidents. We have ones where folks run into us, and we have accidents where we run into either fixed objects or moving objects. So there's a lot of room for improvement, and you can never think that it will not happen to you. We have to be ever vigilant about the fact that the possibility of an accident is always looming. All right, so here's the question. If you have an accident and it's not your fault, you can't possibly get into any trouble for it, right? Well, it may be true for passenger cars, but it isn't always true for buses, commercial vehicles. Even if a driver of the other vehicle gets a ticket and you don't get a ticket, it could be decided that your accident was preventable. Even if a police officer says it was the other guy's fault and the other guy even admits guilt, you still might get relieved of duty or at least reprimanded for having a preventable accident. Now, the question is, how can that happen? Well, here's how it can happen. one simple question, just one. And the question is, I've been faced with this question before. And the question is simply, could you, out of all possibilities, could you have done anything else to be safe, to prevent the accident which happened? Could you have done anything else? And if you can answer that question by saying, no, I couldn't possibly have done anything else. If you can answer that question, then and that in fact is true, then you are a victim of a non-preventable accident. But, and I'll say but and if you stay in your lane and you're always prepared to stop, if you don't get too comfortable while you're driving, if you never get distracted, if you're always looking 10 seconds ahead of you down the road, if you keep 4 seconds of following distance all the time, if you count 4 seconds at a stop, the light turns green and you count 4 seconds before you enter the intersection. If you compensate for the ignorance of other people and always are vigilant about the fact that there are over 30,000 fatalities on the road per year, you will certainly be one of the ones who will wind up never having a preventable accident. Hey, that's right. You. Don't let that person there. Don't let that be you. Do your best to get your rest.
Over 4,700 pedestrians were killed and another 75,000 were injured by motor vehicles in the U.S. Approximately 2,000 of these fatalities happened at a crosswalk or where a crosswalk was available. There are several contributing factors to these deaths, but inattention on the part of the pedestrian or the driver is one of the main causes. As a transit or paratransit operator, a crucial element of your job is expecting the unexpected and defending against the errors of others. It is especially important when operating large vehicles around vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians and bicyclists, who may be oblivious to their surroundings or think the painted lines and lights of a crosswalk offer enough protection from injury or worse while crossing traffic. Your training, experience, attention to detail, and professionalism are the only things between your vehicle and potential tragedy. To help reduce the risk of bus-to-pedestrian contact, one of the best driving habits you can use is to square your turns. You've heard the safety and training staff within your organization preach for years to square your turns at intersections, especially while making a left turn. But what exactly does that mean to you? And what are the safety advantages of squaring your turn as opposed to a shortened or sweeping turn? Take a minute, we'll explain, try to answer those questions. Let's start by taking another look at the actions of our operator. Notice how the operator appears to have a fixed stare and isn't rocking and rolling in the seat? Keeping your head and eyes moving is a fundamental of safe vehicle operation. When negotiating a turn, it's even more important to be aware of your surroundings and do your best to eliminate blind spots. By rocking back and forth, left and right in the seat, you will be better able to see what may be obstructed by roof pillars, mirror housings, sun visors, and navigation devices. A pedestrian, bicyclist, or person using a wheelchair can easily be hidden from your view behind these items, or may be distracted by the 3 H's: handheld devices, hoodies, and headphones. Remember, keep your head and eyes moving and check your mirrors often to be aware of everything going on around your vehicle. Our operator does not have a safe grip on the steering wheel. Obviously, the steering wheel is the main controlling device for your vehicle. It is not a place to simply rest your hands. You must always have both hands on the steering wheel while the vehicle is in motion and never use the spokes of the wheel for turning. Employ the push-pull or hand-over-hand steering methods depending on the situation. The positive control of the vehicle is literally in your hands. The operator is taking the most direct route from the starting to end point in the intersection. This is called a sweeping turn. The operator is looking at the point of the intersection where she wants to end up and not at the bigger picture around her. Although the brakes may be covered, the operator has taken an angle that reduces a wider view of the intersection. In this position, the operator has to look over her left shoulder to see if a pedestrian has entered the intersection from the far curbside, further making this maneuver unsafe by taking her eyes off the direction the vehicle is traveling. Also, note how close the bus will come to the opposing vehicle stop at the light or the stop sign. What if those vehicles weren't stopped behind the stop line in their lane? The chances of a vehicle collision are increased, not to mention the pedestrians who could be in the crosswalk. Up to the moment of contact with the pedestrian, our operator did not decrease speed and in fact accelerated to maintain momentum. By taking a more direct route to the far side of the intersection, there is less chance the operator will be prepared to stop the vehicle. The sweeping turn generally requires the operator to accelerate, naturally meaning a longer stopping distance once the danger is recognized. The fact is, our operator is only saving about 3 seconds by cutting the turn short, and the maneuver exhibits an aggressive and forceful visual to the public. As seen from above, the starting point is represented by A and the end point C. We just saw our operator make the turn in a sweeping movement, represented by the red dotted line. We now realize that this driving habit can be deadly. Now let's see what it looks like when our driver squares the turn at an intersection and practices safer driving techniques. This is represented by the green dotted line, A to B to C. Sounds simple enough, but how do you square the turn, and why is this a safer maneuver? Our operator is rocking and rolling, keeping her head and eyes moving. Notice the body and eye movements of our operator, getting the big picture by eliminating blind spots caused by interior obstructions. She's also glancing at the mirrors. Note the positive control of the steering wheel and the use of both hands. She knows her vehicle will only perform as well as she operates it, and does not have a casual grip on the wheel. Remember, 2 + 2 equals safety. 2 hands on the wheel, and 2 eyes on the road at all times. In addition to being aware of her surroundings and controlling the direction of the vehicle, our operator slows to a coast and covers the brake pedal in anticipation of stopping if a hazard is detected. The vehicle should only be traveling at 3 to 5 miles per hour, and there's no reason to accelerate through the intersection by entering on a green light and making sure the road was clear for the turn. Keeping her upper body and eyes moving, the operator has a clear view of what's in front of and around the vehicle. She keeps the bus parallel with the crosswalk she will be turning into, staying as far outside the intersection as possible. The pivot point, indicated by the yellow line, is the point where the operator's shoulders are even with the center lane divider. This should be your reference spot that tells you when to start the turn. Without accelerating more than necessary, the operator then turns the vehicle sharply left, following a 90-degree angle until the bus is fully facing the crosswalk. Our operator now has the clearest, widest view of the intersection possible and of any pedestrians that may be crossing from either curve. Now that the unit is squared, while continuing to rock and roll, only slight acceleration is needed to complete the turn. She can see the crosswalk is clear and can proceed safely through the intersection. Let's look at the turn once again in real time. Head and eyes moving. Positive control of the steering wheel. Enter intersection on a green light. Keep vehicle parallel to the crosswalk. Turn once you reach the pivot point. Slight acceleration and maintain momentum. It's that simple. Square your turns at every intersection. Whether you're dead heading back to the yard, you have a standing room capacity load, or you're in your private vehicle. Always, always square your turns for safety. Thank you from the entire Capital Metro family, where we are serious about safety.